In a sermon that she preached several years ago, the Reverend Cindy Guthrie Ryan told a powerful story about a grief support group that she once facilitated. She remembered that the first meeting of that group was especially painful. The stories that the people had to tell were just almost unbearable. One woman's husband had recently died after a long struggle with cancer. She told the group that just a few days before, she had dreamed that she heard the doorbell ringing. When she went and answered it, her husband was standing there. But the thing that she noticed was that he didn't look like he had for so long. He wasn't sick anymore. He wasn't emaciated. His face didn't show the signs of pain. His hair was there. And as she looked at him, she began to realize that while she had been grieving for her sick husband, she had yet to give herself permission to grieve for the vibrant, healthy, and strong man that she once knew. From there, the stories kept coming out, one painful memory after another. One man finally confessed that he had been spending nights in the cemetery, lying over his wife's grave. And when the group asked him why, he said it was the only way he knew to feel close to her again. As they continued to talk, another woman said that she was so afraid. She didn't know what to do being alone. The holidays were coming, and there were times that she just wished she could crawl into a hole, that she didn't have to go through them anymore because she was so tired. She was so tired. Finally, one person turned to Reverend Ryan and asked, "Will we ever come out of this? Will we ever feel different again?" Now, I think all of us have been there before, haven't we? We know what it's like to have our world collapse around us. We know what it feels like to be drowning in a sea of grief and despair. We too have found ourselves lost in that darkness, wondering how we will ever find the courage, the strength to move ahead, to truly live again. And then one day something happens. We glance out of our window and we catch a glimpse of a rainbow. Or maybe we stop and we watch a flower bloom. A child reaches out and takes our hand. Maybe we suddenly feel our hearts being stirred by a song. Or we suddenly remember a passage out of a long-forgotten book. And in that moment, we begin to live again. We begin to feel God's Spirit deep within us. And at least for a moment, we realize that we can go on, that there is still something worth living for. And suddenly, hope springs forth. A new life emerges, and the rubbles of our past begin to go away. But that's exactly what happened in the book of Revelation. Now, I know most of us avoid that book, and that's a shame. Because while it is painted as something horrific, something filled with God's judgment and vengeance and anger, that's not what it was ever intended to be. When John wrote it, he was on the island of Patmos, and he knew that the churches in Ephesus were suffering. The people were filled with grief. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to carry on. All around them was death and destruction. And what he sees is a vision filled with hope. At the end of the book, it would seem as though the world is doomed. But then there is silence. Even the angels grow quiet. And in that moment, God walks in. And God looks at the people. And in my own paraphrase, God says, why do you have it wrong? I'm not going to destroy the world. I love you. That's why I'm going to defeat evil. That's why everything that is wrong is going to be defeated. And we're going to build a new world together. And it's going to be a world filled with hope and peace and love. There will be nothing left that's going to harm you anymore. Together, we'll build the world. And there will be nothing to separate us anymore. I will live with you. I will wipe away your tears. There will be no more mourning or crying. There will be no more pain. And this will be a place that will last forever. Now, Christians, how do we miss the hope? How do we miss the love? Do you hear the promise? We are not alone. Even in the darkest moments, they can't defeat us because God is with us. Remember the story of Mary and Martha? Their brother Lazarus had died. Oh, they had done everything they could. They had even sent for Jesus. But for some reason, he didn't come. The Bible tells us that he waited for several days. And Lazarus died. And the sisters were hurt. They were angry. Oh, when they saw Jesus standing in that road, they were so angry. Why didn't you come? If you had been here, he wouldn't have died. Why didn't you come? Have you ever felt like that? In the midst of your pain and your suffering, have you ever said, why aren't you here? Why don't you come? Why don't you stop it? And Jesus looked at them. And seeing their pain, he began to cry. But the story doesn't end there. He looks up from his own tears and he reassures the sisters. He says, didn't I tell you that if you believe, you will see God's glory? And then he calls out. And Lazarus comes walking out of the tomb. And Jesus says, untying, setting free. If you believe, you will see God's glory. Because when God shows up, a new world begins. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no longer there. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from heaven, prepared as a bride, beautifully adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice on the throne saying, "Look, God's dwelling place is among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, no more mourning, no more crying or pain. For the old order of things will pass away." It was John's vision. It's Jesus' promise. It is our dream, our hope, our goal. If only we believe, there will be a new world. A world where God lives among us. A world with no more death, no more mourning, no more pain. Let's begin to build that world today, together with God. To God be the glory. And all God's children say,